Bienvenue sur MORDU, le podcast des passionnés de glisse et d'outdoor. MORDU, tendance ride.
Hello everyone, this is Matt and I'm really happy to welcome you to this new episode in English of MORDU. Today we're diving into the business side of kiteboarding with someone who's been shaping this industry for decades. I'm sitting down with Kent Marinkovic, CEO of Cabrinha, one of the most iconic brands in our sport. Ken started as a windsurfer, made it to the US national team, then climbed every step of the ladder from sales manager to CEO, before taking the bold step of actually buying the brand. In this episode, we talk about leadership, decisions, the impact of COVID, the rise of wingfoiling, and how Cabrinha plans to come back strong in key markets like Europe. You'll hear what it really takes to run a global brand in the outdoor industry and why, even after 20 years, the passion is still driving everything. All right, let's get into it. Hello, Kent. Welcome on MORDU. I'm super happy to have you. The first question I would have for you is, how do you get to be the CEO of a kiteboarding company?
Actually, it was a long path. God, I think I started windsurfing at a pretty young age in South Dakota. And I ended up moving to Colorado and ended up in Florida, where we traveled around, did a lot of windsurf racing. I made the U.S. team from like 91 through 97. I was on the U.S. national team, training for the 96 Olympics in Savannah, Georgia. After my Olympic trials, I was hired by a gentleman named John Berhani that worked at the Pride Group here in Miami. The CEO at that time was Alex Caviglia. Argentinian guy, good friend, hell of an athlete. He was just an amazing character that really kind of showed what work ethic and his organization could really do to build a brand. And just his passion was something that we kind of all fed on. Alex had an accident, a kiteboarding accident back in around 2003. And I believe he passed away in 2004. And that really instilled in me a number of things. One was how important it is to make sure that we're producing equipment that is of the highest quality. And although that wasn't related to an equipment issue, it did instill in me that instruction, knowledge, and were critical components of making sure that we maintain access. You know, in the United States, access is a little bit different than it is in other markets, and I spend a good portion of my time making sure that we keep lifeguards educated, making sure we have beaches open so people can go out there and enjoy themselves and be safe. But yeah, I was with the U.S. distribution and started off as a sales manager, doing windsurfing, et cetera, for many years. And I just kind of went through and sat in all the different desks over a lot of years. After Alex had passed, we were in a little flux. I went to, I've worked with Neil Pride for many, many years. Really one of my idols. I would put him along the lines of an Yvon Chouinard or Phil Knight. They all started at the same time, and presented a plan to say, hey, we're not only take this over, we're going to continue to move and improve the business here. But if you really, I had a lot of experience in distribution, and I have a lot of passion for the sports. But I think if you say what makes you an opportunity or gives me an opportunity to be a CEO, would be that I think you find the best people that are better than you are in every aspect of the business. And, I can say I went to college with Todd Grayo, our VP of sales, somebody I've always looked up to through a lot of years, somebody that I always run every idea past. He's part of our core team of 4 or 5 individuals we have here. But I think if you're going to run a company, you got to recognize that you're going to come with ideas, passions, and you're going to throw a lot of spaghetti on the wall. And then you need people that have a lot of capability and skills, and those that you trust that are going to provide great feedback. And then you have to make sure that you're not afraid to make a decision. And I think that's what we have in our company. That goes, whether it's in myself or in Todd or our CFO, or even our chairman with John Modica. Leadership really just comes down to a few things, and one of them has to be a passion if you're in this industry.
What did you learn from your career as a sportman?
Well, I tell you, one thing, I think if you go back to to windsurfing, when you think you've got a good start, you have to put something in the bag every once in a while. And I also think you got to live no room to let something breathe after you have a deal. Get the deal, close the deal, because circumstances change so quickly that what was right today isn't going to be right tomorrow. And I think you got to consolidate leadership quickly. I think that's a really, really important thing. And I think we've made big mistakes on that. I also think that when you make big changes, you can't be afraid to make big changes, but you also need to, I think our company was built on loyalty. And I think you have to be loyal. You have to give every opportunity for someone or a group to succeed. And but when it's time to make the change, you make a change, and you do it with never looking back, only with the opportunity to win and move forward.
I love it. I can see the racer in you. Like it's super interesting. You talk about loyalty. You mentioned Todd. It's super interesting for me because I was here 20 years ago when I used to import some stuff from Florida to Mexico for my school. But at that time, when I was coming to this company, you were the importer for America. So
yeah, the Americas, all the Caribbean, North and South America. Yeah, that's correct.
Nowadays, you're not only the importer, you're the brand itself. So you don't only distribute the product, you produce the product.
Yeah.
Can you tell us the story? So
Sure.
How did you end up being the American importer and buying up Cabrinha?
Certainly. Like I said, I worked directly for Neil as the president of Adventure Sports for many, many years. And, the Pride Group had gone through its own challenges, just like every company will, with big decisions made, maybe at the wrong times. Some things didn't coincide. So I put together a plan. And
I just stop on this. So what was not the good strategy at that time? So we are in 2017, 2018 at the time?
And I think it even started before. But yeah, I would say under the Pride Group at that time, the plan, hey, you make plans based on what your investors are pushing you to do for sometimes, but maybe as a director or CEO, sometimes you have to go against the wishes of people that don't have the same knowledge you do. And this is something that I try to learn every day too. But I know, our group got involved for good or for bad in snowboards, in bicycles, in stand-up paddle boards, in helmets, and arguably even in wetsuits. And some of these things didn't go exactly as planned. Some of them might have been bad plans, and some of them might have been bad timing.
So to understand your position as an importer, you had to buy the bicycles, you had to buy the snowboards and try to sell it after all?
Yeah, essentially what they try to do is we were owned by the Pride Group at the time. They were primarily a manufacturer, but that manufacturing unit owned distribution units like the Pride Group in Americas, Germany, and way back when Pride Group France with Michel Kistenic and Jacques Frédéric, two really great people that I'm sure we'll get into here a little bit later. But they would try to hold us at arm's length, essentially. So we'd be our own business unit, essentially making our own decisions. However, when I put together the plan to bring this under a new ownership group, I just really maintained that there was a few things we needed to do. And the first and foremost is we couldn't be beholden to a manufacturer. We needed to buy it. The price we needed to buy, we needed to be delivered on time, and it had to be at a quality standard that was acceptable for what we really demand at Cabrinha.
Yeah, so I guess that at that time you were kind of struggling to sell products at the price that you were supposed to sell it to make some money because it was maybe too expensive or not good enough or not custom enough for the American market. That's my understanding.
I got to tell you, it was different. Like with Cabrinha, we were, many times in South America, we were probably north of 80% market share. Yeah. And with Cabrinha, we've always been number one through the Americas. There was no number two. When the Pride Group kind of fell into some areas where maybe cash was a bit of a challenge, it enabled another large competitor to try to take a lot of market share quick, and they did a great job. And I think from my perspective, I'm sure from Todd's perspective, we've always been number one. And I will tell you, you learn a lot more being a number two or a number three than you do a number one. You get a lot smarter when things are more difficult. And frankly, when we regain our rightful position, we're going to regain it through passion, culture, building the brand the way it needs to be built. But I think when we are in that position, I think that we will have learned a lot about what it takes to build the right products to make sure you're always leading in particular categories.
So at that time, you're the importer, and then this idea of being your own captain on the ship.
You're driving your own horse.
Exactly.
Okay.
So,
well, in reality, we had a great director with Neil Pride, and after Neil Pride, they went through a couple of managing directors in Hong Kong. But at that time, the company was already starting to face some struggles that it was clear to me that they might not have been able to recover from at that particular time. And so I pitched the idea to purchase certain assets of the group and allowed their investors to get some money out, and we got to start again. So we ended up, originally we were looking at Neil Pride and JP and Cabrinha. But as it stood, I'm glad that our investment group said, hey, we believe Cabrinha is the crown jewel here, and we'd really like to go forward with this so we can keep our focus very needle point directed on that brand. So we took over the distribution, all of our adventure sports retail stores within the United States, and the Cabrinha brand. And that's when we got into the brand unit. Thankfully, we had Dave Haslow and his group, along with Pete Cabrinha in Maui, that were already running the brand units. And of course, one of the first calls to action was, we're a family group, was for us to start making phone calls and make sure we got Pat Goodman back to the good guys again, and brought our designer back, which is very, very important. So we pulled the brand back together. That gave us everything we needed. So yeah, I would suggest that from my background, the brand side we understood well because we always acted as the brand in the United States, is from a marketing and cultivation standpoint. And we were, I'd say, pretty tightly aligned with the brand unit in Maui. But from the product development side and the manufacturing side, this is where the Maui team, working with Lars Moltrup and Pat and other designers that we have, really brought something new to us. And this is where I think would have been my largest struggle, certainly. When somebody brings something new to you, it's very easy to look at it and say, well, that's how it is because it's always been that way. And I think we're very fortunate that John Modica approached this from not being in the industry at all. He was a tech guy, super smart guy, probably one of the best writers in our entire company. But he thinks in a different way. He said, well, why are we doing it that way? And he really did help to kind of break the mold of how fast we could come to market. What was holding us back? Why are we being held back? And it's interesting. I think he sped up our development cycle. He's doing all the designs of the boards himself, and he just helped us to always question, why are we doing it that way? If it's not working, why? And if it's a legacy, why? Then we know it's open to change and for improvement. And we're not afraid to change and to do things differently. And I think that's a pretty important concept that we're pretty much living by now.
Can you share some figures?
By the second year of our ownership, we had doubled the total sales for the group from a number that started at a pretty significant number. And that, but the interesting part was that we were always number one throughout our markets, and honestly, we'd fall into a number two.
But how do you do to double the size? Because it means, so because I think what's difficult in your business is that you can say, okay, I want to double the size, but it means two things. That first, you manage to sell all those kites or stuff, but it also means that you have the stock and that you said, okay, I want to double the size, so I'm going to produce twice the size. And how did you do that?
And the truth is, we didn't set out to double the size. This is a very interesting thing. I mean, you could write a book about it, essentially. So when we purchased the group, we were manufacturing at the Pride Group, which was a China company that was owned by the same group we were. That parent company got taken over by another group, and they were going to shut down the factory. They only wanted some other asset that was unrelated to water sports. So we had no choice but to try to float that manufacturing unit while we transition to a new manufacturing unit. So we had pretty good volume opportunities coming out. Now, rightfully speaking, you would suggest that as we were coming into the ownership, we're looking at our lower market share than what we were normally used to because we couldn't get the product we needed. Maybe it wasn't the right product. We took over, we addressed some of these things. So as our sales were increasing, remember, we bought this 2 days after COVID. But as our sales were increasing, I would suggest that we might have set back and said, well, we're just winning back good portions of our market share that were rightfully ours. Okay. In hindsight, certainly there's a little bit of growth that was related to that. However, most of the growth probably coincided with the fact that people couldn't travel. They participated in sports more at home. That definitely happened throughout Florida, I can tell you this. And there was a major boon over the next 2 to 3 seasons in outdoor sports activity.
I guess that when COVID started and you just close out this kind of deal, I guess you had a few bad nights thinking, oh, that has been the worst choice ever of my life.
And I don't want to say by dumb luck, but I would say that now we recognize, going to one of the highest peaks that Cabrinha's ever had, that certainly some of it was probably earned, but like all other companies in our industry, most of them had peaks at that time.
All of them.
And then that tells the second part of the story, which is after COVID, you're sitting here you're looking at, interest rates were getting higher. Most mom and pop retailers were kind of struggling, and we're sitting on a lot of inventory, just like all of the other big brands. We're making cautious estimations on how much excess inventory there might be. Now, if it were only our problem, we could fix it. But when you're talking an industry problem that was probably overproduced by, originally we thought 18 months, but it was much more than 18 months of production. So, that's probably where a lot of companies have gotten into trouble. I know even a couple of French companies seem to have gotten in pretty big trouble just recently here. And it's all related, going back to that. And certainly it took a long time to get through this. Unfortunately, I think, retailers got used to buying at certain prices that are certainly not real. And consumers certainly bought at prices that are probably never going to be seen again. However, maybe there's a small upside in the fact that some people that maybe could have never thought about being in the wing market as a consumer, the price was down to a different level, that we got to see a whole different level of consumer there. And now we need to make sure that we come with great products at prices that we can cultivate those groups and make sure they continue to participate forever.
Nevertheless, I have this feeling that Cabrinha is not as present as it used to be in France or in Europe. Is it something that you can confirm?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, honestly, you ask why we did this. Why would you buy Cabrinha? Because it's the greatest, one of the greatest, most iconic brands in the world. It's more than a brand. It represents a lifestyle and a feel and a passion. And that's really one of the reasons why we wanted to buy this, rather than, without disrespecting the European style. If you look at some of our main competitors, it's just nuts, bolts, and direct. We want to be, that's the minimum price to play the game, is to have great product. That we need to be more than that. For many years, Cabrinha hasn't had the representation in France. Actually, I would say the last great representation we had in France, but the distribution in France was the largest. It was larger than my American distribution, and it was larger than the German distribution at the time. Yeah, we had really outstanding representation at that time. For one reason or the other, actually for reasons that I can't know or potentially even comment on, that volume fell under Pride Group Europe, which is based out of Germany. And for good or for bad, I think the Germans have done a great job. Pride Group Germany is fantastic. Manfred's one of the most knowledgeable individuals there is on the planet in these sports. But I would suggest that, a little like the United States, I would suggest that France is pretty nationalistic, and you can tell this from the brands that succeed there, and great brands that succeed. And I do think that what we've recognized, we've made some distribution changes, and some of them have worked, some of them haven't. But everything that we've been working to address is really based, actually, France is such a remarkable market with passionate users. We recognize that if you look at hydrofoiling, for example, some of the best advancements are coming out of France. We know it's a market that we need to be in, but we can't be in there diluted. We can't be in there 3 levels down the chain. When we work in France and when we talk to people like you or our important retailers or consumers there, they need to know they're talking to the brand. We've just made recent changes to take over our distribution and manage our own business throughout France and a number of other countries in Southern Europe. And I think it's absolutely the right call. Now, when we need to meet with the right people, or they want to talk to the Cabrinha brand, they pick up the phone and they get the top. They get Todd, every day. They can get myself. They can go all the way to John Modica from time to time. But the truth of the matter is that I think that the brand is learning more about the French market, more about the French people, and understanding how we need to integrate to actually be successful in that area. But I think we've made the right decisions to do that. We absolutely have the right products to do it. I think we've even got athletes that will help us to be successful in that area. Even with Titouan, it's funny when I look back.
Yeah, because so we had Titouan Galea a few years back in MORDU. At that time, he was world champion. He was with F1.
Yeah,
and he did this bold move to go to Cabrinha. So it was super interesting.
Well, I mean, he's a user's user, man. I mean, the guy, he's not a guy you're gonna go do a bunch of demos or things like this, because he's going to be on the biggest wave he can find and enjoying himself. But it wasn't by accident that we really try to focus our efforts in that market. But the difference is that we're trying to do it in a real and legitimate way. If you look at something, I get bored with the word, the market, on this market or that market. No, you have to really understand the people and what they want and what drives them. And you can't just pick the athlete. It's an entire program that has to go together. I'm friends with a lot of athletes. Anton Albo is a good friend of mine. He's been to Miami many times, and you see that kind of competitive spirit in there. It's a leadership market in the world. We can't go in there and say, because a lot of our designs were based in Maui or wherever that you really have to take the direct feedback. And I think that's what we've done with our athletes, our ambassadors, our retailers in that French market. And I can tell you, we will be there, but we're going to be there because we make sense. First and foremost, we're going to be the brand that consumers want to be a part of. Our Drifter project, where we take people with physical disabilities and give them the opportunity to do the same sort of cool stuff that we get to do. That project is something people want to be a part of. It's more than just selling a product. You have to want to be a part of the tribe. And I know we have the right team. We have the right passion, right desire, right experience to open ourselves and to allow people into our team and our family. And I think we're cultivating a feeling that will make French people want to be a part of our family as well. And for us, it's really quite simple. We want you to test our latest products against the latest products from the other great brands that people are using in various markets around the world. And I feel 100% confident that when you test our latest foils, our latest kites, and our latest wings head to head against our competitors' products, close your eyes, you're going to feel the difference. And this is really a critical component to being legitimate and being real, so we can compete in markets like that and get back to having fun. I think we need to do that.
I can't wait to test. You still have the switchblades?
Well, it's interesting because, when we took over the company, the knock on the switchblade would have been that it had bar pressure that was a little too heavy, right?
Yeah.
And because that was coming from the old popular windsurf style. And one of the changes we had to do was think about where we were off and where we needed to go. And I think we went a little too far on the soft bar pressure for a while, but we're right back to where we need to be. And it's interesting. I was on the phone with John Modica on Saturday, and we just got in a new prototype of a very special product that's going to be coming out with the Switchblade name. And we tested it head to head with the other kites that we believe are leaders in performance categories, even all the way into big air. And I cannot wait for people to test what we have coming against the best in the market, or what's perceived to be the best. I think something at the beginning of the year would be our goal. Okay, this is the year of stability. We just got to get it done and stay on the tracks. And now we're back into an innovative phase where we can start to lead again. And I think that 100% the globe is going to recognize that we absolutely have the number one product in foil. And I think that anybody who rides our latest product is going to come. Yeah, there might be one aspect of brand X or Y that might be better in one aspect, but we are at the top of our game in this. And that foil alone is going to change people's perceptions about Cabrinha and situate us exactly at the top. And what it's already doing is it's encouraging people to want to try our other products because they know what we can do. And I think when you give us an opportunity and you try our products at the local beach, I think you're going to find that that we've done a pretty damn good job.
Cool. Back in Europe, the wing got pretty big, got that big that it's competing, with kite surfing. I would say like wing is like up, and kite is down. We were with Cedric George, the CEO of North, who mentioned like that he thinks that the kite surfing market is decreasing by 15%. He said 10% last year, maybe 15% this year. How is it in the States?
That's interesting.
And how do you see this? What let's say in 2026, how much percent of your turnover will be done with kite, and how much will be done through wing?
Yeah. Well, there's a bunch of ways to look at that, and to be honest with you, that's an impossible question because we've got the best distribution in the world here in the United States, and we've got great distribution in Europe, but we've gone through some changes. All right, so that's a difficult question to answer. But what I would say is this. We know this game. I mean, we were with Neil Pride for many years in windsurfing when kiting came out.
Yeah.
Okay. I can tell you what you're seeing between wing and kite is nothing like that. That was a monumental change.
From windsurf to kite, it was huge,
pure devastation.
Okay.
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
It was pretty bad. But actually, I look at this entirely different. I understand where North probably is, and we're happy to take their 15% market share. No problem. But on the back end of that, what I would suggest is
to be really precise, Cedric was not saying that he was losing market share. The market was decreasing by 15%, but that he would be able to make plus 10 or plus 20% in this decreasing market share.
I don't know. We'll find out. No, good group, but I feel pretty confident where we're sitting. On the back end of that, it's interesting because I look at wing. And sure, there's been some cannibalization. There's no doubt. You can go to our beaches here in Miami and see that, or anywhere in the world, really. However, what I'd also say is that if you were to look at where's our growth come from, right? When it was kite, where does your growth come from? It pretty much came from people who were early adopters, right? Because it's a big step to go from anything to a kite. And then paddleboard was enormous, right? But frankly, the jump between a paddleboard to a kite was a monumental jump. Windsurfing had already kind of been hurt for a significant amount of time, so that wasn't really the viable feeder market at the time. So paddling and these things probably would have been. However, I find, and we did a big video series more for the States on this, about kiting or winging for suppers, and now we'll go kiting for wingers. I think what winging did is it became a little more accessible for somebody who would have never thought about doing it. So frankly, I'm happy that we have more participants coming in and growing the overall pie. I do think some of these participants, if you live in an area like Miami Beach or some area in the world that's got outstanding access to a beach, Tarifa is a good example, right? You could do whatever you want to there, but they've got more than enough beach. Kiting's outstanding. I mean, I'm definitely more of a kiter than a winger because where I live, I like to go jump. I have a good time. And we don't have a lot of waves necessarily here. But I would suggest that I think winging is a great feeder just to get more people involved. One step up from an entry-level program like whether it's kayaking or stand-up paddleboard or Pilates or yoga or whatever you want to be, to where we could let them feel a little bit of power from the water and that wind. And I frankly see a resurgence in windsurfing. It's very interesting in Miami. Windsurfing is absolutely, in the youth programs, it's outstanding. And I'm going to tell you, kiting never had an opportunity in there because it's these yacht clubs, sailing clubs, those environments aren't built for it. Winging can almost do it, but windsurfing's there. So I don't view this, it is cannibalistic over the short period of time, but in the long period of time, I would say we just showed a lot of people there's a great opportunity to get out there in the water and enjoy it.
No, it's totally true.
I mean, look at surfing, for example. I mean, surfing was not, windsurfing was not really attractive to surfers. Kiting certainly wasn't. Winging, you're seeing a pretty unique crossover because of that foiling and surfing aspect. Man, any day of the week, I would take some cannibalization of anything we do to have one little opportunity to have some surfers, whether it's a Kailani or anyone else, look at wind sports as an option for one of their weekend
you can
activities.
see that John Florence was super early on prone fall, on soft fall. You have Justin Dupont, who is like a big wave rider who's doing some wing, sometimes. So, and it's totally true, like I remember when I was kite surfing, I used to be a kite surfing teacher. And when I was mentioning kite surfing to surfers, I mean, like, it was out of...
You had to block.
So it was like I was telling them I was doing fencing or tennis, it's like, interesting, but it's not related to what I'm doing,
Well, look at even the higher side of this. I mean, very much like the States, I think France is a nation of sailors, competitive sailing. You look at the America's Cup boats with the foiling aspects, and look at all of them being sponsored, or almost all of them. We worked with American Magic right up out of the Panhandle. We've went up there. They taught everybody how to wing foil. And most of them on their off time are out there wing foiling, and some of them are even getting into kiting. But that is such a unique feeder between sailing, surfing, stand-up paddleboarding. Now we have something for everyone. I think it's fantastic. Then you look at the next, now you're starting to see the parafoil and the downwinding, and it's great. I think these are all exciting things. But we are absolutely going to never. There are brands out there that you've seen, they were good in one category, something else would come and they would just switch, and then they'd switch and they'd lose their base. We're not doing that. We're doubling down on kite surfing. We are absolutely committed to having the best products in the world. And I think we're going to be able to prove it this year. We're not giving up our base. We're only adding the pieces to it because our families want to go out there and enjoy it.
In terms of percentage, how do you see things? It's going to be like 50% of kite, 50% of wing?
Well, it's interesting because you got to remember that the kiters, okay, let's say there's less people learning to kite. There are definitely more people learning to wing now. And actually, it's a function. My wife has a great school here in Miami called eFoil USA, right? And she was always doing kiting, but now it's so much easier to teach a wing lesson. And this is the problem that we need to be cognizant of, is that we've got to have kite locations that are teaching. The issue is that most of the new kite sales are coming from an existing kiter, right? Whereas a good portion of wing foiling sales are coming from new users, right? So it's actually expanding the base. But I mean, you're probably 35 to 35%.
For you, you say 65% of your sales will be on kite and 35% of wing.
Well, if we're talking about the cut and sew portion, because we've got a lot of other aspects of the business.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Okay. And the price of the wing is not the same as the kite.
Sure.
But 2/3, 1/3 to be, and it's
plus or minus.
And it's a super difficult question. And sorry to get back to that, but it's a genuine question. I think it's interesting, and I have no idea. I have the feeling that the wing is going up like super quick.
In some markets, it's only doing that.
Yeah, but for example, I was in the Netherlands to see North. But Netherlands, it's all about kite surfing.
Yeah.
Because of the beach, because of the waves,
and they got great events, young community. It's outstanding.
Kite surfing is huge, and it's interesting because you have a big distributor in Netherlands, Kite Mana, which is the biggest kite sellers of kite in Europe.
We were the first kite company to open Kite Mana, I remember, with Cabrinha under our distribution.
Yeah. And I was super surprised because I visited the store and they don't sell any wing. And I was like, why those guys are not selling any wing? This is the market you want to be in. And I was with the CEO of North, and he was like, yes, but they want to stick to kite. And when you are in the Netherlands, it kind of makes sense.
Not only that, I think rather than being a jack of all trades, they're just trying to be a master at the one they can do great. And they really, you see things around the world. I think Kite Mana has just done a great job. I look at how they've led by bringing in great ambassadors. I just think they've done a good job. I think there's a lot to learn by focusing on what you're best at and being very careful here. And, from our aspect, we're always going to lead in kite. I'm so happy with where we're at in wing. Most of our company, I think, John, and I'd say 65% of our company is probably even doing as much wing or maybe even more wing than kite right now. But it kind of goes back and forth. I watch my wife. It's a great example. Kiter. Wing came, only winging. And I've seen her transition already back again.
Yeah.
And you see this happening. So, it depends where you're at, and it depends what the opinion leaders are doing.
Yeah. But that's true that as of today, I don't own a kite. I've been kiting for 22 years. It's the first year that I don't own a kite. I sold it like last summer, and I was like, yeah, let's sell it. I had an opportunity to sell it. Okay. And I was like, anyway, I'm just winging, and now, I have not been kiting for the last 10 months.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I miss it so much. I need a kite because, you want still to feel the feeling, the adrenaline, and sometimes it's just better to do kite. I was in La Sarga, Morocco, where there is a wave, but to be honest, I was in my wing. The wave were not going like perfectly for the wing, so I didn't have a good time. And I was like, why don't I have like a kite? I would have the station of my life,
Yeah. Well, can you imagine being on a flat water location, going back and forth, and I see all the wingers, and I get it, and I love it when they're new wingers, right? But on a kite in a great flat water location, you go out to Stiltsville here, you're boosting, having a great time. You don't even have to be a pro to do it.
That's totally
it's fishing and golfing.
Yeah. I totally share, your excitement about the market going up and up and up and getting more and more people in the water, women, kids, old guys, newcomers, maybe people with some disabilities, to be all in the water. So I'm like super excited that you shared this excitement. And I also think that we need the companies trust in the market because you are the one who invest, who promote, who sponsor, and that's what made all those new toys for everyone. So it's great to see that all those companies are investing into our sport. That's cool. What still excites you after 20 years, 30 years in the business?
Well, I'll tell you,
and I would say as a CEO and as a rider.
Well, as a CEO, I would say the most exciting, I like to compete. I like to compete into new areas. I like these challenges that we've kind of given ourselves. I actually we were number one for so long. I actually like the opportunity to sit back here and fight and scramble to get back up. And I think that offers there's a lot of unique creativity that you really get to think out of the box. I mean, I can't tell you how many times a week that whether it's Todd and John, myself, Dave Haslow, Lars, where we're on the phone for 2 hours brainstorming unique opportunities that we see in finding the homes for them. And then it goes to the next level where we're organizing our global distribution. And honestly, there's unique challenges too. I mean, in the States, it's so different because we have a vast geographic area. And it competes with monster truck bowls and all-star wrestling, right? So we're fighting pretty hard for that little piece, right? There's not so many retailers. So we're saying, how do we get these products to consumers in the most efficient way possible where we're keeping the costs down? These are great challenges that we really get to look at, and they're fun to work on. And then Europe, it's really interesting. The challenges are entirely different. There's fantastic retailers throughout Europe. There's many more of them. They're often smaller, and they feel kind of community type spots. I mean, Todd's probably traveled through there more there than you have in the States. No doubt, by a long shot.
Yeah,
it's 2 or 3 years.
It's really true because I've been on a road trip with my family in Florida.
Yeah.
I didn't see any shops. To be honest, I saw one shop, but like, I'm not sure it's not even open anymore, a super tiny shop. And you are in the States, so you could expect to have huge retailers. I didn't see any.
They do, but they're motorcycle and jet ski shops.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But I do think that's interesting because we get to think about creative strategies to service our Cabrinha family here in the States and in the Americas, and then how different you really have to look at it in Europe, working with great partners like our partner in Germany and elsewhere, right? And I think that those are the challenges that are really, they're kind of fun to work on. I do also like looking at our products and being involved in the product side and really pitching I really want to push stronger innovation, disruptive technologies, right? And we have a good time challenging ourselves with that. And then from kiting, to be honest with you, it's funny, we have a bet in the office. We do little competitions in here from time to time, whether it's the brand people or the retail folks, myself. And this next, the last one, unfortunately, was a weight loss challenge. And I lost by a half pound and I had to eat a ghost pepper. But But this year, we've got 3 of us in the office that all have to perform a trick. Either that, in my case, it's going to be a trick that I used to do in the past that I definitely cannot do now.
Which one is it?
I have to do a big scent mob. So it'll be a dangle pass, but I'm a little bigger than I was before. And so I've got to do that. One of our managers has to do he can do a kite loop handle pass, but he has a hard time doing board off. So he's got to do the kite loop board off. And then one of the younger guys has to do an old school blind rewind, which is you're in blind, you throw the kite loop along with the front roll out of blind. It's a pretty unique trick.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is each of us get 3 shots at it on the same day. And that day is going to be in April. And if the winner takes all. If we all tie, that's fine. Nobody eats the ghost pepper, but winner takes all. But I like to challenge myself. I mean, years ago, I set a world record in 2001 or 2002 going to Cuba on a kite out of Key West. We did that with Red Bull, and 3 of us made it down there. I like the downwinders. I like kiting where nobody goes, parts of the Bahamas. I don't like to kite around crowds. So the European scene is a little different for me in some of these big centers. Whereas, I just prefer, like in Miami, my favorite ride is to take off out of Virginia Key, go around Key Biscayne, kite out in the flats of Stiltsville, and come in an evening. It's great. I just ordered 2 more. I'm more of a directional board guy. I've always had custom boards, and now we have a board called the Rocket that we just came out with that is, or that we will be coming out with, that is very similar to my style of board. It's a very narrow board. I use a quad fin. I like a lot of speed in it. It gives me a lot of range. I can use a smaller kite. I love downwind racing. Those are the things that kind of turn me on, which that's the cool thing about kiting, winging, foiling. There's really something for everyone, you know? And I also like it because not everyone can do it. And you feel pretty unique when you're the only person at the bar that's a kiter, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah. And I think that inspires people around the world. I don't care if you're French or Austrian. Being unique is what a lot of our wind and wave sports enthusiasts really strive to be. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Ken, for your time. And happy to see Cabrinha on the beaches in France and Europe again. It's a great name, great brand. So I wish you the best.
Well, let's get you on a new Switchblade or Nitro, and we'll get you back into kiting.
Excellent.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers.